We are joined by Congressman Don Manzullo, who wants to help stimulate the automobile industry, and he wants to give Americans a $5,000 voucher towards the purchase of a new car. Congressman Manzullo joins me now. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Good to be here.
You know, you introduced a bill to give Americans $5,000 to a voucher to buy a new vehicle. That sounds, I'm sure everyone out there thinks that's a great idea. How would it work?
Well, first of all, we are never going to get out of this recession unless we kickstart manufacturing. And the best way to kickstart manufacturing is to get consumers start to buying the biggest consumer product, which is automobile. If you go to a dealer, there's a $5,000 point of purchase voucher. For example, you could buy a Jeep Patriot made in the congressional district I represent. Instead of paying $20,000 for it, you pay $15,000 for it. You could buy for less than $300 a month for 5 years. What that does, Kitty, that restarts the supply chain. It gets people back to work again. Instead of getting unemployment compensation, they start paying taxes. It restocks the state and local government tax coffers with sales tax. This is how America can move back out of the recession into production, restarting the automobile industry. And there are enough people still working in this country, and there's enough demand for new cars that we could do this, and this is the only way that's going to work.
You know, I'm sure you just heard our report that we had in advance of you that talks about how many of these parts come from other countries. What have you to say to that? Well,
it's unfortunate. I'm sort of glad Ford didn't take any TARP money, otherwise they would have to explain that particular ad. However, there are enough cars that are made in this country under the Big Three label and under foreign labels that would put as many as 13 million Americans back to work again. That could restore $1 trillion of the economy. We went from selling 16 million cars to 9 million cars to 8 million cars projected this year. If we can get back up to 15 million cars, that'll inject $1 trillion more into the economy. That will restart American manufacturing, put people back to work again, and that's exactly what it's going to take to pull us out of the recession. Otherwise, we're just pouring water in from the top, which doesn't do any good. We have to start the fire at the bottom. We have to ignite the purchasing process, and this is the best way to do it.
You know, there's been a great debate over government's role in jump-starting the auto industry, and one very controversial move by President Obama to ask the GM CEO, Rick Wagoner, to step down. What's your opinion of that?
Well, that's what happens when you have this bailout money. Under my bill, the money doesn't go to the companies, it goes to the consumer. And the consumer uses that at the point of purchase in order to kickstart the automobile industry. I mean, you know, in the Rayburn office building where I have my office, there are 3 time zones and 2 stories. And, you know, if the House of Representatives can't coordinate the clocks in one office building in Washington, D.C., how's Washington going to run General Motors?
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems very clear to us that a certain line was crossed. You know, last week you grilled Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner on his plans to seize businesses that could harm the economy if they failed. You called that absolutely radical.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about why you think we're off the track here in terms of government participation in business.
Well, he did not draw the distinction between financial companies that receive TARP funding and those that don't. He wants to have a one-size-fits-all pattern to control, for example, executive compensation, and that's what happened with the bill that passed the House yesterday that could control compensation down even to the teller. But what we saw happen just yesterday in Europe at the G20 was nothing less than even more radical, because now Secretary Geithner is proposing, with the help of the administration, a worldwide international control over all financial interests, in fact, over any corporation, to the extent of even controlling the compensation of the employees. That's not only radical, Kitty, that's frightening.
Yeah, it certainly is. You know, just one quick question, and I put you on the spot a little bit with it, but don't you think that people inside the Beltway should drive Big Three cars? And we don't see that, do we?
I have 3 Dodge Caravans, and I just gave our Buick to our son in law school. And the Mercury is something that I use in Rockford, Illinois, when I'm doing congressional business there. Well, all my cars are made in America.
Hopefully everyone will follow your example. Thank you very much for joining us.